The stadium was a roaring ocean of sound. Thousands of graduates in black caps and gowns tossed their caps into the bright blue sky. It was a sea of smiling faces, loud laughter, and happy, proud tears. But not for me. Before we begin, I'd love to know who's listening. Where are you from? Tell me your city in the comments below. And after you hear my whole story, be honest. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Tell me in the comments. We read every single one. Now, let's get started. I sat stiffly in my seat, my hands clenched in my lap. When the dean's voice echoed through the loudspeakers, it felt like a spotlight was shining only on my pain. Avery Donovan, summa cum laude. The words should have been the proudest moment of my life. The section of the stadium around me, which had been bursting with noise for every other graduate, suddenly fell into a deep, awkward quiet. There were no cheers for me, no clapping, no family waving frantically back at me. I looked over at row F. Seat 12 was empty. That was the spot I had carefully reserved for my mom. Seat 13, for my dad, was also empty. The seats beside them, meant for my sister and my grandparents, were just hollow, vacant spaces. I stood up and walked across the stage, holding the diploma that felt heavy in my hands. I forced a polite, tight smile onto my face, as if the silence didn't sting. But inside it felt like my chest was splitting wide open. The girl who sat next to me back in our seats leaned over and whispered, "Where's your family?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "They're busy," I managed to say. "They had other plans." She looked sorry for me, her eyes full of pity. But I didn't need her pity. I had grown used to being the invisible one, the afterthought. After the ceremony ended, a wave of joy exploded around me. Everyone ran into the open arms of their parents, laughing and crying. I just walked. I moved straight through the celebrating crowds, my cap hanging limp from my hand. The late afternoon sky was a beautiful golden color, but the air felt colder than any day in December. Then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from my mom, not a text message or a phone call. Just a notification that she had posted a new photo. My heart sank as I opened the app. The picture hit me harder than any words could have. It was my mom and dad, beaming with pride, their arms wrapped around my sister Vanessa. They were standing under glittering fairy lights at a fancy party. Vanessa was holding a champagne glass in one hand and a fake shiny golden trophy in the other. The trophy read, "Employee of the Month." The caption below the photo made my blood run cold. "So proud of my daughter, the real achiever. Her success party is just beginning. #blessed, #proud parents." It had nearly 200 likes already. I scrolled down and saw a comment from my Aunt Carol. "Your girls are amazing. Vanessa is truly gifted." Someone else had written, "Where's Avery?" And my mom had replied, "Oh, she's busy with her little projects." My hands began to tremble. My little projects. They had thrown a huge party for my sister's Employee of the Month award on my college graduation day. I wanted to throw my phone against the pavement. I wanted to scream until my voice was gone. But I didn't. I just let out a quiet, bitter laugh that burned my throat on its way out. Then, I took a deep breath, wiped my eyes, and opened my laptop. The real world was waiting. 3 unread emails glowed on the screen. These were from companies I had been secretly negotiating with for months. The first was from Harper & Lowell Publishing. It read, "We'd like to officially extend our partnership offer for your debut novel." The second was from Riverbend Media. "Your novel concept has strong film potential. Let's discuss." The third was from Lithouse Digital. 3-book deal proposal attached. Please review and sign. My cursor hovered over the first digital signature box. I whispered the words under my breath, a new strength filling my voice. "You can keep your parties," I said to the empty parking lot. "I'm building an empire." Click, click, click. 3 digital signatures later, I leaned back in my chair. My heart was pounding, and my eyes were damp. But this time, it wasn't from sadness. It was from something sharper, something stronger. They had missed my graduation to toast my sister's small success. That was fine, because by morning, the real achiever in the family wouldn't need their applause at all. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds of my small, quiet apartment. My graduation gown still hung on the back of the door, untouched, wrinkled, and already feeling like it belonged to a different person. I sat on my couch with a cup of coffee in one hand and my laptop in the other, staring at the 3 signed contracts glowing on the screen. A sense of calm power settled over me. That's when my phone rang. "Mom." I stared at her name, flashing on the screen for a full 5 seconds before I took a deep breath and answered. "Hey," I said, my voice flat. "Oh, honey." Her voice was too bright, too cheerful. It was the voice she used when she felt guilty. "You must have been so busy last night. We tried calling you." That was a lie. No missed calls, no texts. "No, you didn't." I said calmly. She paused, and then cleared her throat, pretending she hadn't heard me. Anyway, you wouldn't believe Vanessa's event. The investors loved her pitch. Everyone said she's destined for greatness. You should have seen her in that dress. Yeah, I interrupted, my tone even. I saw it. On Facebook. A heavy, thick silence filled the line. Then, her voice dropped into that sharp, critical tone I had known my whole childhood. It was the tone that always came right before an insult disguised as advice. Don't sound so jealous, Avery, she said. Your sister is just ambitious. You'll find your thing too one day. I exhaled slowly, looking at the signed million-dollar deals on my screen. My thing, Mom, is building something that doesn't require your permission. What is that supposed to mean? She snapped. It means, I said, my voice still perfectly calm. I'm done trying to impress people who only clap when it's convenient for them. She sighed loudly, muttering something under her breath about my attitude problem before the line went dead. She had hung up. I sat there in the beautiful silence that followed, and I smiled. A real, genuine smile. Because while they were busy worshipping Vanessa's fake success, I had just closed 3 very real, life-changing deals. The world didn't know my name yet, but it would. 2 weeks later, I found myself standing in the sleek, modern glass lobby of Harper & Lowell Publishing. It was the very same company that had rejected my internship application 3 years ago. A young assistant greeted me with a warm smile. Miss Donovan, Mr. Harper is ready for you now. As the elevator doors opened to the top floor, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I didn't see the quiet, overlooked girl from graduation. I saw someone sharper, more confident, and completely determined. Inside the corner office, Richard Harper, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and calm, intelligent eyes, stood up to shake my hand. I've been reading your manuscript, he said with a kind grin, and if this is truly based on real experiences, you're sitting on a bestseller. I smiled faintly. It's not based on one event, Mr. Harper. It's based on years of being underestimated. He chuckled, a deep, appreciative sound, and signed the final paper on his desk with a flourish. Then let's make sure the world knows your name. When I walked back out onto the busy city street, the air felt electric. I looked up at the towering skyline, the same skyline my mom used to tell me I'd never truly reach. This was my start. That night, as I returned to my apartment, I made the mistake of scrolling through social media again. My mom had just posted another photo. It was a picture of Vanessa, taken with a flash, in what looked like another fancy restaurant. The caption read, Vanessa's firm officially partnered with Rivera Designs. Our little star just keeps on shining. I noticed the comments. Someone had written, what about Avery? Didn't she graduate yesterday? And my mom had replied again, Avery is focused on smaller projects. Vanessa's our pride and joy. My thumb froze on the screen. I didn't cry. Not anymore. The sting had finally burned itself out. Instead, I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone and whispered, keep talking. Because while they bragged about borrowed success, my inbox was lighting up again. New emails poured in from streaming executives, international publishers, and one message that made my pulse quicken. The subject line was simple. Film rights. Urgent discussion. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face in the dim glow of my laptop. They could post their parties, their praises, their pictures. I didn't care anymore. The girl they called a dreamer with no direction was about to sign something that would change her entire family's definition of success. And this time, they would have no choice but to notice. The world takes notice. 2 months later, I was sitting in a quiet, stylish downtown cafe. Across from me was a famous news anchor from Morning Pulse Live. She was in her mid-30s, wearing a sharp suit and smiling a smile that said she knew I was a story waiting to explode. So Avery Donovan, she began, adjusting the small microphone on her lapel, the girl whose family skipped her graduation is now the youngest author this year to sign a $3 million publishing deal. How does that feel? Her words hit me like a thunderclap. $3 million. I hadn't even said the number out loud yet. It was so big it still felt like a dream. It feels, I said slowly, choosing my words with care, like I finally graduated from needing anyone's approval. She laughed softly, appreciatively. That's powerful. And I hear the contracts include film rights? Yes, I said, holding my smile steady. A major studio reached out after reading my book online. They said it reminded them what real resilience looks like. What inspired you to write it? She asked, leaning in. My answer came easily, from a place of hard-won truth. Being invisible. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the cameraman gave a thumbs up, signaling the end of our segment. The anchor leaned closer, her voice low and confidential. You know, your story's gonna blow up online. You should prepare for some family attention. I let out a quiet, knowing laugh. Let them scroll. When the interview aired on national television that night, my phone truly did light up like fireworks. Notifications, messages, tags. It was a flood. People I hadn't spoken to in years were congratulating me. Journalists were requesting follow-up interviews. The title of my book started trending on social media within hours. And then, at 8:47 p.m., my mother called. Avery. Her voice was tight, a mix of confusion and shock. What is this I'm seeing on TV? I stood by my apartment window, watching the city glow beneath the night sky. It's my work, Mom. You know, those little projects I've been wasting my time on. Don't start with that tone, she snapped, her defensiveness rising instantly. You could have told us. We could have helped you promote it. Made it something professional. I almost laughed out loud. The irony was breathtaking. You couldn't even show up for my graduation. You think I believed you'd show up for this? That was different, she insisted. No, I cut her off, my voice firm. It wasn't. You made a choice that day. And so did I. The silence on the line was heavy and strained. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, trying a new tactic. Well, your father and I are proud of you. Now you are, I said quietly, because the world is. She tried to recover. Don't be dramatic, Avery. We've always believed in you. No, Mom, I said, the truth finally set free. You believed in Vanessa. You tolerated me. There was nothing but static on the line after that. I hung up before she could find any more excuses. 3 days later, my publisher invited me to a high-profile charity gala. It was the kind of event my mother used to drag Vanessa to, just to take pictures for her social media. When I walked into the sparkling ballroom, a few heads turned. It wasn't because I was famous yet, but because I carried myself differently. I looked confident, composed, and unapologetic. The simple, elegant navy silk gown I wore felt like armor, and every step I took felt like a quiet act of defiance. Then, I heard it. A familiar, high-pitched laugh from across the room. Vanessa. She stood near the buffet table, a glass in her hand, surrounded by people from her firm. Her hair was perfectly curled, and she was speaking loudly enough for people nearby to hear. I'm not surprised my sister's getting all this attention, she said to a group of her colleagues, a smirk on her face. She's always been good at turning pity into publicity. I didn't move. My blood ran cold, but I kept my expression neutral, my back straight. One of her coworkers noticed me first. His eyes widened in alarm. Vanessa, he whispered, nodding toward me. She's right behind you. Vanessa turned. The color drained from her perfectly made-up face. Avery, she stammered. I didn't mean. Sure you did, I said calmly. And don't worry, you're right about one thing. Her voice trembled. What's that? I leaned just a little closer, my voice soft but steady as a rock. I don't need anyone's pity anymore. Just then, the event host's voice boomed from the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote guest for the evening, the author of the stunning new novel, Through the Quiet Walls, Miss Avery Donovan. A collective, surprised gasp rippled through the room. All the cameras swiveled toward me. Vanessa froze, her fake smile collapsing into a look of pure shock. As I walked up onto the stage, a thunderous applause erupted. I briefly scanned the crowd, and there they were. My mother and father, sitting near the back, their expressions completely unreadable. 2 years ago, I began, my voice clear and echoing across the hushed hall. I applied for a job at a great company. I didn't get it. I was told I wasn't cutthroat enough to succeed. That I was too quiet, too patient, too soft. I paused, letting the words sink in. So I wrote about it. I wrote down every word, every scar, and somehow, people related. I took a breath, looking out at the sea of faces. I used to believe that success meant making my family proud. But I learned something much more important. Real success is when you can look in the mirror and feel proud of yourself. The applause that followed was deafening. Cameras flashed like a lightning storm, and from my place on the stage, I could see it all. My mother quickly wiping her eyes, my father clapping slowly, and Vanessa staring hard at the floor, unable to look at me. After the event ended, a journalist approached me for a photo. Behind the flash of the camera, I heard my mother's voice. Avery, wait. I turned. She reached for my hand, her voice trembling. We should talk. Let's have dinner as a family soon. I gave her a polite, distant smile. Dinner sounds nice, I said. Just make sure it's not on the same night as Vanessa's next party. Her face fell. I saw the hurt in her eyes, but for the first time, it didn't change my heart. I turned and walked out into the cool night air, my heels clicking firmly against the marble steps. The city lights glittered, reflecting in my eyes. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one watching them walk away. They were watching me. The night after the gala, I sat by my window, looking out at a city that was still wide awake. Bright towers, neon lights, millions of people chasing their dreams the way I used to chase my family's approval. Except now, I wasn't chasing anything. I was leading. The next morning, a new email arrived from my publisher. The subject line made my breath catch. "Congratulations, Avery. Netflix confirmed pre-production for the series. Contracts attached. Let's discuss press tours next week." My hands trembled as I scrolled through the details. My story, the one no one in my family had believed in, the one written in the lonely silence of my apartment, was about to become a show watched by millions of people around the world. I closed my laptop and let out a long, shaky breath. It was really happening. That's when my phone buzzed again. It was a text message from Vanessa. "Avery, Mom's really upset. She says you embarrassed the family at the gala. You could have said something nicer about us." I stared at the screen, my lips curving into a small, disbelieving smile. Then, my fingers typed out my reply with a steady calmness I truly felt. "Vanessa, you embarrassed yourselves the day you made me feel invisible." The rest was just the truth. There was no reply. A week later, Netflix released the first teaser for the series based on my book. The tagline read, "Based on a true story. The girl they ignored became the woman they could never forget." My phone exploded all over again. Friends, strangers, critics, influencers, everyone wanted a piece of the story. But I didn't post about it. I didn't brag on social media. I didn't need to. Instead, I quietly booked a ticket to my old university. I was invited back as a guest speaker. The same auditorium that had once echoed with other people's cheers for their children now had a huge banner hanging above the stage with my name on it. Guest speaker, Avery Donovan, author and producer. When I walked in, the students all stood up, clapping and whistling for me, the same way I had once dreamed my family would. I smiled, blinking back the warm, proud tears that welled in my chest. When I took the podium, I began simply, from the heart. 2 years ago, I said, my voice clear and strong, I sat in one of those very chairs, thinking I didn't matter because no one had shown up for me. I looked out at the young, hopeful faces. "But I want you to know something. You don't need applause to be worth something. You don't need a crowd to start. You just need conviction." The hall went completely silent. It wasn't a silence of disinterest, but of every single heart listening closely. "And when the world tells you you're too small to make an impact," I continued, my voice growing even stronger, "remember this. Even a whisper can shake the walls of those who underestimated you." Thunderous, heartfelt applause followed. And for the first time, standing in that familiar place, I wasn't the forgotten one. I was the reason people believed in second chances. I was the reason they believed they could overcome anything. That night, I walked out into the parking lot. I was holding the same folder from my graduation day. Inside was the same diploma, with the same folded corners. But this time, I wasn't walking alone. A driver stood by a car, holding the door open for me. Cameras flashed from the campus gates. Reporters called my name. My name was no longer a forgotten echo in a silent stadium. It was a headline. I looked up at the night sky, a small, peaceful smile finally tugging at my lips. "They missed one ceremony," I whispered to the stars, "but they'll never miss another." Then I stepped into the car and drove away, not as the girl who was ignored, but as the woman the world finally saw.